So I was working in Algiers to design a computer system for the entire country. And about 6 or 7 months after I arrived in the country, they declared the petroleum embargo. It suddenly occurred to me that it was like a giant chess game. We had, up until then, East is East and West is West, and the two great superpowers struggling against each other. And all of a sudden, this move by this third party, they called the unaligned nations, we call them the third world, suddenly was like an unexpected move from the side of the chessboard that nobody could see, and it changed everything. It changed the balance of power, it changed the relationships of all the pieces on the board, and it's still happening the same way today. I came home and I decided that I would write this book where there was a giant chess game going on all over the world. I started going through my library and I went to the Legends of Charlemagne. So in the Legend of Charlemagne, there's always somebody having a chess game in the middle of something because chess was very popular by the time they wrote the legend. And I decided that that would be a really good time to start the book. The entire plot of the book is structured on an actual chess game that actually took place between two world grandmasters, and we see all the different moves that are taking place over the 200 years. The most common thing that people said to me about the Eight was, when I was reading the book, I felt like I was walking around inside the novel. That's all you want to accomplish as a writer.
And one of the reasons I had so many jobs, by the way, is not that I was so creative about finding jobs. It was because I kept getting fired or laid off. When I got out of college, with a degree in business and a degree in English, there were no jobs for a woman unless she could type. And I couldn't type. I still can't type. I write my books like this with one hand. So I had to take any job that I could possibly find. And Ned left out a few things like waiter and busboy that were part of my career. And what happened was there was this brand new industry starting up called data processing. And I had never heard of it. And it turned out that I tested the highest of almost anybody in the country on aptitude for computers. So they all trained me. I went to work in data processing, and that took me all over the world. Because every time I get fired or laid off, I had my resume someplace else. And it ended up that I had a job one day in the Midwest somewhere for one of those big CPA firms of the kind that have just been involved in all the scandals lately. And I was a little depressed by what was going on in my company, and I was about to quit. And so the senior partner called me in one day, and he said, Katherine, I want to talk to you. And I said, well, I want to talk to you about something too. So he says, meet me in my office at 3 p.m. I said, you go first. And he said, we have a new project starting up in Algiers. And I said, I'll go. He said, do you know where Algiers is? I said, no, but I'll find it on a map. So I ended up actually going in 1972 to Algeria on the coast of North Africa. And about 6 or 8 months after I got there, this little-known boys' club called OPEC decided to declare a world embargo on oil, and I was right there working for them. So that became the inspiration for my first book, The Eight. I should say, like Jody, I've been writing books novels since I was 8 years old. I mean, almost every author, if you ask them, when did you really start wanting to be a writer, start writing, it's usually around 8 or 10 years old. Well, the boys kick in about 14 or 15, but, the girls start earlier. So anyway, I got the idea to write this book in the 1790s during the French Revolution till the 1970s during the OPEC embargo. Everybody's chasing around trying to find this chess set, and the entire book is a huge chess game with 32 historic characters and 32 modern characters, and it's got puzzles and tales within a tale and very complex plot. I thought no publisher in the world is ever going to buy a book like this. Well, as it turns out, it was bought 20 years ago, as of last year, 20 years ago, by Ballantine Books, which is part of Random House. And that book is now in 40 languages. It's been a bestseller in all 40 languages. I mean, I think we recently Bulgarian, Latvian, and so forth. And the book was voted a few years ago in a national poll by El País, the big Spanish newspaper, was voted one of the top 10 books of all time. My favorite books when I was little were these swashbuckling pirate adventure novels like Raphael Sabatini, Captain Blood, Scaramouche, the Seahawk. But the thing that really changed everything, and I've never mentioned this to anybody before in any interview, but I was quite young, I think, in my early teens when this huge movie came out, uncut, full screen, Lawrence of Arabia. And I went with a bunch of little boys and girls of that age, and we finished the movie, and the boys were going like, I really identified with him, didn't you? And I was thinking, here I was living in some, I don't know where, Midwestern town, going to this boring school, never learning anything about history, geography, or whatever. And I was thinking, one day I will go and live there. I just thought it. The minute they played that music and you see him racing across the desert with camels, I just thought one day I will go and live there. But there I was working on a job. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know where Algeria was till I got there. And I thought, the minute my plane landed, I thought, this seems more like home, because there's something about places like that are so enormous. It's not like having adventures. It's like seeing something that nobody else has seen before. I was in Algeria when the OPEC embargo was declared, and up until then in my life everything had been the Cold War. East is east and west is west, and everything was like this giant game going on. Here I was in the middle of North Africa, and all of a sudden there's this third factor, this unexpected move from an unexpected source, which happened to be what we used to call the Third World. They called themselves the unaligned nations, and they weren't just Middle Eastern nations. It was Mexico and Venezuela and everybody who was a member of OPEC, Indonesia, and they all were a third power that no one was expecting. And it seemed to me like this really unexpected move in a chess game. And so I have that in the fire. I have her pull, our heroine, when she finally gets to play a game of chess at the end of the book, she pulls out of her pocket, her arsenal, an unexpected move that had never been played before. Taking someone by surprise changes the balance of what's going on, that we think is going on. So it's just like seeing this chess game from way above, and all of a sudden, whoom, somebody brings something in that you weren't expecting, and you've got to react. Whenever our attention is diverted from here to here, we're forming new connections and able to make new connections. And this is the thing that really inspired me about chess players. In fact, there's a great book by de Groot in the Netherlands from 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Someone had sent me called Memory and Perception in Chess. And it's fascinating. They study how chess players, because of the way they're trained, have a totally different perception of the layout of a situation, and they're able to look at things from a whole lot of different vantage points at the same time, and then spotlight in their mind the one place that's different. They're constantly processing what the norm is, and then they look at what's something that's different. And so that's what I do in the books. No, I don't do any outlines at all, but I do have these bubble charts that we used to call data flow diagrams in the computer biz, where you have all these circles, and each circle for me has a person in it, and they're all connected. So I had all the British part of the book, all those people were connected. So all these people knew each other, and I have this huge chart that I actually sent my editor, so he would have some idea where all these people were connected. Hopefully, each one of these little clusters of people will create a scene where they're all together in a room telling some story. Well, as it turns out, for the fire, I had so many of these, I probably have enough of these clusters of people that I could probably do another 15 books, which I will not be doing, I might add. But the thing is that the ones that have the best stories to tell, because they had the most exciting things happening in their group, those stories emerge, and sometimes it really surprises you. And I think that those are the kinds of skills and techniques, I think, that are incredibly valuable, to be able to always be within this larger domain of time and never forget that time is always there with us, but to be able to focus on what's important within time. And I've noticed, on TV and the radio lately,
people tending to panic about all kinds of things. You know, their voices get higher and more hysterical about everything that's been going on. Elections, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, the economy, this, that. And they're not drawing back to get the big picture. They're not looking at the overall picture. And I think it's because we've tended to get our attention span shorter and shorter by flashing through TV channels and stuff like that. We tend to send 15 emails where one email will do, or you could pick up the phone and say yes or no, you know, instead of everyone's commentary. And I really think that what we've done is, it's good. I mean, it's good to be able to take in large amounts of data in short bites, but you still have to be able to stop, as you said, Kasparov did, and draw back and look at the whole, because after all, it's your whole life. It isn't just this sound bite or that sound bite. It's the whole, you know, it's the whole planet. So yeah, I try to always have that focus in my books. I always try to never let people forget that it's not just the game we're watching. It's the whole context. So it's not, you know, people are always calling it thinking outside the box. I like to do, in my books, I like to stretch the walls of the box so we're all in there together, and keep pushing them out until we can see a bigger and bigger picture.